PSY4407 Assignment 2 Group Presentation Rising Obesity Rates by David Tuck, starred by Alsaleh, Kate Gray and Elif Gur. Overweight and obesity are defined as abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that may impair health. Obesity is defined as a body mass index equal to or greater than 30 kilos per meters in height squared. Obesity is a major risk factor for cardiovascular diseases including heart disease and stroke, diabetes, musculoskeletal disorders and some cancers. Childhood obesity is associated with a higher chance of obesity, premature death and disability in adulthood. As the level of excess weight increases, so does the risk of developing these conditions. Overweight and obesity is the world's second highest contributor to burden of disease after dietary risks, and smoking is the third highest. A BMI of 30 is associated with a 30% increase in early mortality, and a BMI of 40 is associated with a 100% increase in early mortality. Worldwide obesity has more than doubled since 1980. Overweight and obesity kill more people worldwide than underweight. In 2014, more than 1.9 billion adults were overweight, and of these, 600 million were obese. 39% of adults aged 18 years and over were overweight in 2014, and 13% were obese. 41 million children under the age of 5 were also overweight or obese in 2014. Obesity is caused by a range of biopsychosocial factors including genetics, mental state, and exposure to environments in which calorically dense foods are readily available and physical activity is limited. Obesity is not classified as a mental disorder. However, a number of individuals with obesity suffer from recognized eating disorders, usually binge eating disorder or not eating disorder. The cause of overeating and eating disorder appears to involve food addiction, caused by ineffective affect regulation and stress responses which trigger emotional eating. Being overweight and obese is often the cause of these psychological disorders, which perpetuates a cycle in which the greater the emotional conflicts and difficulties, the greater the incidence of unhealthy eating and obesity. There is no one-size-fits-all treatment for obesity. Research into the relationship between personality and obesity reveals complex relationships in which varied combinations of psychological states and traits affect outcomes. Negative body image, low self-esteem, mood disorders, and social and family factors affect individuals in different ways and contribute to weight gain and failure in weight loss management. Assessment of mental health factors and treatment with appropriate mental health models improves self-worth and weight loss and maintenance. Behavioural treatments for obesity aim to promote more healthy eating by providing adaptive dietary strategies as well as encouraging people to be more physically active. BT attempts to provide the individual with coping skills to handle various cues to overeating and to manage lapses in diet and physical activity when they occur. BT typically results in short-term weight loss of around 10%, however in most cases 30 to 50% of the weight is regained within the first year after the end of the program, and baseline weight is generally reached within 5 years after the treatment. Motivational interviews are designed to increase motivation for adhering to diet and exercise programs by helping people to identify personally relevant reasons for change, eliciting personal goals and problem-solving barriers to change. People who received MI combined with behaviour therapy lose more weight and engage in more weekly exercise than those receiving only behaviour therapy. The combination of MI and BT also shows better results for maintenance of weight loss and improved psychosocial functioning of obese adults than BT alone. Cognitive behavioural therapy helps people to manage psychosocial problems which may be causing problematic eating by examining how their actions can affect how they think and feel. CBT works by helping people make sense of overwhelming problems by breaking them down into smaller parts. CBT interventions are self-monitoring techniques, stress management, stimulus, social support, problem solving, and cognitive restructuring. Cognitive behavioural treatment of obesity shows improved short and long-term outcomes compared to BT. Interpersonal psychotherapy is used in the treatment of binge eating disorders that result from poor interpersonal functioning in obese individuals. IPT seeks to reduce binge eating pathology by supporting the development of healthy interpersonal skills that can replace maladaptive behaviours and promote a positive self-image. IPT is the only treatment that has shown comparable long-term outcomes to CBT and is also the most effective form of treatment for patients with more severe eating pathology and lower levels of self-esteem. Dialectical behaviour therapy is used in the treatment of women with borderline personality disorder. DBT aims to restore the ability to identify, accept and regulate their emotions using the affect regulation model of binge eating, which posits that binge eating occurs in response to intolerable emotional experiences when more adaptive coping mechanisms are not accessible. Mindfulness meditation and practices have so far shown promising outcomes but require further evidence-based trials. A multidisciplinary approach that addresses psychological, social, environmental and biological factors of obesity is critical to ensure comprehensive care as well as best practices and outcomes. The achievement of substantial weight loss is significantly related to the ability to make permanent lifestyle changes that involve more appropriate nutritional intake and exercise, as well as improved management of stress and emotional states, which lead to decreased reliance on eating as a coping mechanism.
Sigmund Freud developed the psychosexual theory where he proposed that psychological development in childhood takes place in a series of fixed stages. The oral stage is described as getting much satisfaction from putting all sorts of things in its mouth to satisfy the libido and thus its eye demands. Emotional deprivations or excesses in this stage of development became associated with nourishment in the potentially obese individual. This stems from the mother inappropriately feeding the child in relation to its emotional and nutritional needs, which in turn results in a serious disturbance during the oral stage and many failing to distinguish between various sensations and previous research has shown that an overwhelming majority of these individuals also suffer from anxiety disorders as well as depression. Individuals are also prone to turning to food to help cope and suffer greater difficulty controlling their consumption of food. This may cause a dysphoric mood, and the resulting guilt will lead to the continuous pattern of using food to cope with emotions. Other researchers have also found that obese individuals attribute poor body image and body dissatisfaction, poorer mental health, lower levels of self-efficacy, higher weight loss expectations. And there may be underlying personal issues that may lead to lack of energy or motivation, and an increase in food consumption is often seen by an individual as a way of dealing with or avoiding the problem. Stress can also make an indirect contribution to obesity, as food and alcohol intake often increases when people are stressed. Obesity can trigger depression, distorted body image, and low self-esteem, all which can lead to a strain on intimate and romantic relationships. If a depressed partner gives up on life, this can lead to resentment and anger in the non-depressed partner. A person with distorted body image may go to great lengths to hide his or her body from their partner or feel uncomfortable being sexual, leading to low self-esteem, which ultimately damages a relationship. Obese individuals also experience stigma in dating, particularly in preference for partners. Chen and Brown 2005 concluded that both men and women ranked an obese partner as least liked. They found that women ranked an obese partner as significantly less than men did. Obese individuals face considerably negative consequences as a result of discrimination. Obese people are ascribed negative attributes such as being lazy, undisciplined, less confident, and are often underrepresented and stereotypically portrayed in the media. Individuals with obesity may feel stigmatized by the community and are therefore less likely to be involved in community groups, which require much needed stimulation and support. Psychological interventions should be used in the context of a multi-component program to gain maximum benefit along with daily eating and exercise regimes. Cognitive behavior therapy assists and addresses the problems that underlie the condition to achieve long-lasting maintenance of weight loss. Kursu 2013 also recommended CBT coupled with psychotherapy as an effective treatment method. Psychodynamic insight-orientated psychotherapy is useful in assisting with conflicts regarding excessive weight, body image, relationship to food, disordered patterns of eating, relationship issues, and dealing with the prejudice and overt discrimination obese patients may experience.
The prevalence of obesity in Australia and globally is still on the rise despite efforts and plans to reduce it, with the rates being higher in developing countries than developed countries. In Australia, obesity is more common in lower socioeconomic groups and in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, with 1 of 4 children are either obese or overweight. In 2011 and 2012, the prevalence of obese children aged 5 to 17 has stabilized at 25.3%. These rates are associated with the increased risk of developing a variety of weight related comorbidities before or during early adulthood, which poses a serious threat to our next generation as this epidemic of childhood obesity passes through. What's contributing to this rise? According to the World Health Organization, biopsychosocial factors have been found to contribute to the development of obesity. The main drive behind obesity is the obesogenic environment, which promotes weight gain and sedentary behavior in children and leaves a big part to self regulation. Some links have been made between gestational diabetes, the exclusivity of breastfeeding, and early infancy diets to the development of obesity. Another problem is the lack of education and awareness on what constitutes a healthy, nutritious diet, the availability and affordability of healthy foods in our communities. Another big factor in this national and global health crisis is the marketing and advertising of attractive, energy dense foods and sugary drinks, which are all to blame. The current neighborhood designs, an increase in technology and digitized games all reduce the chances for physical activity. How can this epidemic be prevented and treated? Again, according to the World Health Organization, it is more efficient and cost effective to take preventative measures rather than to treat obesity. In 2008, the Australian federal government added obesity to the list of national health priorities. To combat this problem, immediate collective effort is required across all levels of government, the food industry, and all relevant organizations. This requires the development and implementation of public health policies and health promotions to make a change at homes, schools, neighborhoods, and national levels. Parents need to be educated, mothers need to be encouraged to breastfeed, changing school curriculums, increasing physical activities in schools and neighborhoods, and regulating the food industry are all vital actions. As mentioned previously, the rates of childhood obesity stabilized in 2011 to 2012, which means the campaigns that were implemented put a halt on this national crisis. For example, the Chef Stephanie Alexander Garden National Program that encourages planting and harvesting fresh fruits and veggies in schools found a significant improvement in students' food choices. And the New South Wales Department of Education and Ministry of Health introduced the Fresh Tastes at School program, which changed the canteen food and became mandatory for all public schools. Another campaign is the Live Life Well at Schools program, which encourages physical activity in PDHPE and overall in school. These campaigns promote health and are evident that intervention can prevent this issue. The Obesity Policy Coalition is a government body aimed to change policies and regulations to prevent obesity, specifically in children. Their action plan entails the following: regulating the advertising and marketing of foods and beverages to children. This includes advertising on TV, radio, sponsorships in kids' sporting activities, apps, online activities, and any other social events. Another policy is to improve food labeling by encouraging interpretive front of the pack clear food labeling on packaging and menus to help individuals make informed decisions about the consumption of certain types of foods. Another action plan is the Urban Planning and Health Environments policy that regulates the design and planning laws that can influence public health by improving neighborhood designs and promoting healthy lifestyles. For example, having access to parks and bike tracks. One of their other policies is to introduce tax on sugary drinks, as these are the largest source of sugar consumption for school-age children. These policies must be implemented to put a halt on childhood obesity.
There is significant stigma and bias towards people who are obese throughout the general and professional population. It is often viewed as a very preventable condition. There is much research which suggests that the problem is influenced by environmental factors with reference to a toxic environment, and therefore should be seen as more than a personal issue. The bias which is current in our society has a significant effect on the legislation and policy passed, as the public pressure and opinion can often direct policy. In contemporary society, obesity is often associated with laziness, lack of discipline, and gluttony. This stigma can have a lasting effect on individuals living with obesity. It affects opportunities in employment, social relationships, and even treatment by healthcare professionals. This stigma creates a circular relationship, contributing to the distress, depression, and low self-esteem associated with disordered eating. Only recently has obesity been, in part, considered an eating disorder, as listed in the DSM-5, and there is hope that with the classification, the societal view will change and further policies, programs, and services can be developed to help curb the prevalence of obesity. There are arguments around how much the government should interfere, not only with preventative policy, but also with public health options available for those who are obese. Lund, Sandow, and Lass in 2011 found that the public were only in favour of publicly funded health treatments if the condition was life-threatening. This, they reported, was due to the belief that obesity was caused by an individual's own conduct. Furthermore, there are those who support their ability to have a choice for a particular lifestyle, and that this should not be controlled by policy, which leads to the consideration of children and those incapable of making informed choices on dietary requirements and their right to a healthy life. This is a controversial issue and is an ongoing debate. Currently, there are some policies in place, such as nutritional value labels on food packaging, which aim to make information available and allow for informed decisions. There are several government-led campaigns aiming to educate and encourage healthy lifestyles, but a reluctance to control food marketing advertising further. This is ignoring the effects continuous advertising and promotion has on society and the environment in which individuals are meant to make their personal choice. To change public opinion, Lund, Sandow, and Lass in 2011 suggest three options, arguing that if untreated, the health conditions caused by obesity will lead to higher costs on the public health system than prevention, appealing to the humanitarian stance that everyone is entitled to health care despite circumstances, and finally, putting a tax on foods of high risk, which are most likely to be purchased by people who are obese. For those detained in residential facilities such as correctional or psychiatric, there is evidence for a relationship in weight gain and the lengthened stay. While there is also evidence for the relationship of mental illness or socioeconomic disadvantage and obesity, both of which correlate to a high percentage of those in prison or detained, there are also factors of being detained in itself which contribute. The general purpose of a stay within these facilities is to reduce community involvement. This then leads to other restrictions: how you can spend your time, what you can eat and when, what activities you can participate in, and so on. The main impacts related to weight gain include low levels of exercise, insufficient meal programs, and medicational side effects. A common symptom for mental illness such as depression is a lack of interest in exercise amongst other activities. While those in the general population struggling with this symptom may be able to work with their psychologist to engage in small exercise programs such as walking around the block or joining a gym, there are legal restraints which may need to be considered with those who are detained or incarcerated, such as the level of security they are under. Oakley al. 2013 note that the lack of available choices for activity and exercise pose an additional challenge for inpatients, with Bacon, Farnworth and Boyd 2012 finding that the use of a Nintendo Wii Fit valuable in a secure setting. However, within Australian prisons, it is stated by Herbert et al. 2012 that prisoners were more likely to do the recommended 150 minutes per week of exercise than their general populace counterparts, and this was credited to the inherent structure of the prison, which enabled access to exercise. It is therefore a crucial part of working with clients in a residential facility to take in consideration the availability of such programs and encourage suitable access. Inmates and inpatients will have restricted choice in their everyday meals. It is the responsibility of the facility to provide meals that are of nutritional value. However, Herbert et al. 2012 found that meals were often higher in salt and carbohydrates than the recommended level. Furthermore, both in correctional health facilities, there is opportunity to purchase extra meals or snacks, which are often energy-dense and salt-rich. Oakley et al. 2013 even suggests that clinical teams can use food as rewards or incentives, or simply allow the excess consumption of food, treating the mental health in isolation to their physical health. Interprofessional approaches are therefore key, seeking advice from dietitians or nutritionists to assist with meal planning. A controversial element is the restriction of food, particularly in psychiatric and health facilities, as there is a fine line between dietary regulation and impeding on one's autonomy. This is something which needs to be determined case by case, as it can depend on the capacity of the individual to make informed decisions in regards to their dietary intake. Furthermore, this can also be seen as part of a treatment for those with binge eating disorders or similar eating disorders where removal of stimulus, i.e. certain foods, is required. The potential to gain weight is well associated with the use of antipsychotic medications, not excluding antidepressants and mood stabilizers. A high percentage of inpatients in psychiatric facilities are prescribed these medications for long-term use, increasing their risk of becoming obese. Taking a holistic approach is therefore necessary to ensure that the individuals receive suitable education about their risks and how to implement lifestyle changes to prevent them. Therapeutic patient education may be a tool which can be used as it is designed to teach individuals to self-manage and adopt treatments for chronic conditions, which can include learning coping skills and implementing lifestyle changes. Obesity is a very prevalent issue in society with effects across many colleges in psychology. It is obvious that a multidisciplinary approach is required in order for prevention and treatment.